Hi, welcome to Prajim Technologies. My name is Venkat. This is part 1, Introduction to C Sharp. In this module, we will understand the basic structure of a C Sharp program, what is a namespace, purpose of a main method. With that, let's jump straight into a demo. Fire up Visual Studio, go to All Programs, Microsoft Visual Studio 2010, Microsoft Visual Studio 2010. This fires up Visual Studio. Now create a new project, go to File, New, Project. And remember, with .NET, we can use a variety of different programming languages like C Sharp, and there are other programming languages as well, Visual Basic, C++, F Sharp. Now we will choose our programming language as C Sharp, and with .NET, you can create different types of applications. You can create web applications, Windows applications, Office applications, SharePoint, WCF, etc. But we will be creating a console application. So the type of application is console application and the programming language is Visual C Sharp. We will name our project as Introduction to C Sharp, and we are going to create that project in C drive. Click OK. So this creates a C Sharp console project for us. Now we will be talking about Solution Explorer, Properties Window, Toolbox, etc. in a later session. So let's close them for now. And I want to make this program as simple as possible. So let's leave only the basic required, lines of code within this program and get rid of the others. So let me get rid of this unwanted namespace declarations. I also don't require this line, this one, and I don't even require these parameters to the main method. All right. So if you look at this particular program, it's a very simple program. Hardly 3 lines of code with a couple of braces around it. Okay, now what do we want this program to do? I want this program to print a very simple message onto a console screen. Now if you're wondering what is a console screen, it's nothing but the command prompt window. And to get to the command prompt window, start run and type cmd or command. Okay, anything would get you to the command prompt. So this is the command prompt window. Okay, so on a window like this, I want a message, welcome to C Sharp training, and I want your C Sharp program to do that. And to do that, it's very simple. Okay, I don't have to write any new methods or something like that. I can make use of the classes that are present inside the .NET framework. Now, if you're new to what is .NET framework, then please check my video tutorial on .NET framework basics. Okay, so within .NET framework, we have a class called console class. Okay, we can use this console class basically to write messages onto this console window, which I have just shown you, or read messages from the console window if a user has typed something into that. Okay, so now my program has to write something onto the console. So I'm going to use a function called writeLine. Okay, so I'm using this writeLine function, and to that I will pass a message that I want to be printed onto the console. For example, I want this message, welcome to C Sharp training, to be printed onto the message. And now to run this program, all I have to do is press Ctrl F5. And once you do that, you have that message on the screen. Welcome to C Sharp training. Press any key to continue. When I do that, the program terminates. Okay, so it's as simple as that. So if I have to print a message, all you have to do is use this writeLine method, pass it the message that you want to print it, and this function is present inside this class. Now, if you look at this program, there are a couple of pieces involved in this. Okay, the first line right here is called the namespace declaration. Okay, so what do we mean by namespace declaration? Basically, this line tells that to the rest of the program, we are going to make use of code that is present inside this system namespace. Okay, so what is a namespace? I mean, at the moment, understand that a namespace is a collection of classes, for example. Okay, because this console class, if you look at the fully qualified name of that, this console class full name is actually system.console. So the console class is present inside the system namespace. So if I hover over that, it says namespace system. So this console class is present inside this namespace. Now, if I don't have this declaration there, what's going to happen? Look at this. We get an error. Okay, so what is that? The name console does not exist in the current context. Okay, so this red squiggly line indicates it's an error. So if I try to build this application, if I go to the build menu and says build solution, I get a compiler error. The name console does not exist in the current context. That's because the program does not know where is this console class coming from. So to let our program know that we are going to make use of classes that are present inside the system namespace, we use that declaration called using system, like so. So this will tell to our program, we are going to make use of that class, console class, which is present inside this namespace. Now, if you ask me, is a namespace just a collection of classes? No, it's a collection of variety of things. For example, let me take you to the slide. So in this slide, you can see that a namespace is basically used to organize your code, and it's a collection of classes, interfaces, structures, enums, and delegates. Now, what are these? Okay, so we will be talking about classes, interfaces, structures, enums, and delegates in a very great detail in our later video sessions. So until then, don't worry. So, but just understand that a namespace is basically used to organize your code, and it's a collection of all these. Okay, so that's that. Now, just to show you, it's in fact is a collection of all that system dot. Look at this. For example, action, that's a delegate. So a namespace can contain delegates. And if you look at this one, activator, that's a class. And similarly, there are various other things like events, etc. And if you look at this, interestingly, this one is actually a namespace. So a namespace can contain other namespaces as well. So what is a namespace? A namespace is used to organize your code, and it's a collection of classes, delegates, namespaces, etc. Okay, now is it mandatory for me to use a declaration like this? No, not really. You can get rid of that if you want, but if you do that, you have to use the fully qualified name like so. So you can either use the fully qualified name like that, or you can use the namespace declaration. It's up to you, whichever is convenient. Usually, in general, people use namespace declaration on the top because if in your program, if you are referring to console class multiple times, you don't have to use the system keyword, every time you use the console class if you have a namespace declaration here. So that makes it more easy, less typing basically. Okay. All right, so that's about namespace declaration. Another important thing to understand here. Okay, so let's get rid of this. Let's have a namespace declaration. So using system, and then the next piece of thing that you have to understand is this class program. Okay, so any piece of code that you write should actually be inside a class. And when we talk about classes, there are static classes and instance classes, which we'll be talking about in a very great detail in our later session. So until then, don't worry. We just require a class. Any piece of code that we write should be residing inside a class. So this function should have a place to live, and that is going to be this function, this class called program. Okay. And this method, this is the function. Functions and methods are the one which will actually do the work. We will be talking about functions in a very great detail again in a later session. A function will have something called access modifiers, static modifiers, return types, function names, and parameters. So we'll be talking about all these in a later session. But if you look at right here, this function name is called as main function. So basically this function tells, okay, the program execution, when I actually run the program, the execution should start right there and end right there. So if I run this program, what's going to happen? It enters, it starts executing here, prints this line, and terminates here. Okay, now let me make a copy of this. Say for example, I have, maybe I'll call that main one, and just for differentiation, we call this as training one. Now, if I execute this program, do you think will this message be printed, or this message will be printed, or both of them will be printed? What do you think will happen? You know, from this slide, if you understand, main method is the entry point to your application. So where is the main method? This one is the main method. This is not the main method because it says main one. So it treats that method as something else. So this is the entry point. So your program execution starts here, ends here, which means it only will print this line. It doesn't print this line. Okay, so if your class, you have this class called program. If this class has got hundreds of methods inside that, now where should your console application start at execution? That's what is determined by your main method. So your main method is basically the entry point into your application. Okay, now so let's go ahead and run this. The moment I run that, look at this. It says welcome to C# training, which is this one, but it doesn't print the line. But what if I want even that line to be printed? And the way to do it is just before, we know that the program will be terminated here. Just before that, call your main one function as well. So what happens when we run the program? The execution starts here. It prints this line, and then it sees this method call, this function call. All right, let's wait. I need to call this function as well. So it goes here. It executes this function, finishes the call, come back into this line, and terminates the program. So now if I go ahead and run this program, it's going to print both of these messages onto the console. So it's as simple as that. But one thing to keep in mind is that every console application should have a main method, which basically tells that's the entry point. That's where the program should start executing. Okay, so to sum up, this is a simple C# program. We have a namespace declaration, and we need to have class, and inside that class we have our main method, which signifies the entry point into your application, and we are printing a message onto the console. Using system declaration, the namespace declaration indicates that you're using the system namespace. A namespace is basically used to organize your code, and it's a collection of classes, interfaces, structures, enums, and delegates. And main method is the entry point for your application. So that's it in this presentation. For additional resources, please check our website at prajimtech.com. And for any interview questions, ASP.NET and C#, please refer to these two resources. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Hello, welcome to Prajim Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 2, Reading and Writing to Console. In part 1, Introduction to C#, we have seen the basic structure of a C# program, what is a namespace, and the purpose of the main method. We have seen a very simple C# program there. All this program does, if you look at the slide, it prints out a message saying, welcome to Prajim Technologies. That's what this program does. But in part 2, we are going to make this program a little more interactive. For example, when I run the program, it should prompt the user to enter their name. So when I run it, it should ask the user, please enter your name. The user types in his name, for example, let's say Prajim, and your program should output hello Prajim. If I type my name as Technologies, hello Technologies. So your program should be a little interactive. It should take the input from the user who is running the program and then print that name back to the console. So reading from the console and writing back to the console. That's what your program should do. So in this session, as I told you, we'll read from the console, write to the console. And there are two ways basically to write to the console. One is using concatenation, and the other one is using the placeholder syntax. Usually prefer placeholder syntax because it's more clean. Now let's look at the demo. Okay, so what should our program do? It should print a message to the console, asking the user to enter their name. And in the previous example, we have seen to write a message onto the screen, we can use the WriteLine method that is present in the console class. And we know that console class is present inside system namespace. So console.WriteLine. So we will ask the user to enter their name. So please enter your name. So what happens when we run this program? It will prompt the user to enter their name. So once they enter their name and presses enter, we should read that name on the from the console. For example, if I run this program, so it will print this message, please enter your name. So the user has to type their name there, and we should read that name from the console. And to do that, to read something, see, to write something onto the console, we use the WriteLine method. To read something from the console, we can use the readLine method. So console.readLine. So what will this function do? This function will read a line that has been typed onto the console by the user who is interacting with your program. So if he types, for example, Prajim and presses enter, this readLine method will read that word Prajim. And if you look at the IntelliSense, this function, okay, if you look at the IntelliSense, it says now here console.readLine. This is the fully qualified name. And if you look at the return type, this is the return type. What is this function doing? It is returning a string. For example, if the user types Prajim, that word is a string which will be returned back to the program. So readLine is going to give that name back to you. So you have to store that in a variable so you can use it later for printing. So I'm using a string variable called username. So username equals console.readLine. So if I enter Prajim, this method is going to read that and give it to this variable. And this variable will hold that value. Now what do we want to do with that? We want to print it onto the console. And to do that, again, to write something onto the console, we can use the WriteLine method. So console.WriteLine. But this time, we want to say, for example, if the user typed Prajim, we want to print out a message, hello Prajim. Okay, so I can say hello, okay, and that's the string, hello and a space. And to that, I want to concatenate whatever is present in this variable. Okay, so if the user has entered Prajim, it will say hello space Prajim. If the user has entered something like London, hello space London. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this program. So when I run this program, look at this. Let's walk through the code. Okay, so first this line is printed, console.WriteLine, please enter your name, please enter your name. So I enter my name Prajim and then press enter. So the moment I press enter here, what's going to happen? This piece of line, this piece of code will be executed. It will read that word Prajim and stores in this variable. And then what happens? This line will be executed. Okay, in username we have Prajim now. So Prajim will be concatenated with this string and output it onto the console. So if I press enter, it will say hello Prajim. Alright, so it's as simple as that. So this is reading from the console and this line is writing to the console. Even this line is writing to the console. Okay, actually to write to the console there are two different ways. This one is called concatenation because we are concatenating this string with this string using a plus symbol. And in general, people actually use a different syntax. And that one, let's comment out this one, Control K, Control C, the keyboard shortcut to comment, or you can use the symbols right here. So comment and uncomment, uncomment and comment. Okay, so instead of concatenating strings like this and printing, we can make use of the placeholder syntax. So how do we do that? Console.WriteLine and within double quotes, hello, space, and then within curly braces, 0. So what's going to happen? This is treated as one string, and within this string, there is a placeholder here. What should go into this placeholder? Whatever you pass in right here. So now what's going to happen? It's going to take this variable and substitute in this location when you execute the program. So instead of concatenating like this using plus symbols, you can actually use this placeholder syntax, which is mostly preferred. So when I go ahead and run the program, the output is definitely going to be the same. So Prajim, so hello Prajim. Okay, so you can either use placeholder syntax like this, or you can use concatenating strings, but usually people prefer this. Okay, so this is reading and writing to a console, the exact similar program that we have seen just now. And one important thing to keep in mind is C# is case-sensitive programming language. And what do we mean by that? The variables, etc., are actually case-sensitive. For example, if you look at this program, we have a variable, of type string called username, and we are using that variable here. Now, if by mistake, instead of capital U, if I use a small u like that, look at this, we get a red squiggly line indicating that there is an error because C# is case sensitive. So C# compiler treats this variable and this variable differently because there is a change in case. So C# is sensitive to that case changes. So that's why you need to keep that fact in mind. C# is case sensitive. Okay. So C# is case-sensitive programming language. And just to make this, to let you know that how better it is to use a placeholder syntax. Let's say, for example, we want to print the end user's first name and last name together. Okay, first name comma space last name. So a program should ask the user to enter your first name, and we should read that into a variable called first name. And I also want the user's last name, so I should prompt the user to enter their last name. And to do that, so let's make a copy of that. So ask the user to enter their last name and use a variable as so. So last name. So we have two variables, one variable holding their first name, another variable holding their last name, and I want to print their first name comma last name. So I can say hello comma and then maybe another placeholder. So this is the first placeholder and this is the second placeholder. Now we have a variable. Okay, so the output should be, if I enter the first name as Prajim and the last name is Technologies, the output should be hello Prajim comma Technologies. That's how I should have. So this string says, okay, hello. If you look at this string, whatever is highlighted, hello, there's something here, comma, and something here. So what should come here? First name, and what should go here? Last name. So we pass them in that order. So first name, comma, last name. So now if you go ahead and run this program, first it will ask the user to enter their first name. So I enter my first name, and then it will ask the user to enter their last name. So we enter their last name, and the moment you press that, hello Prajim, comma, Technologies. Okay. So pretty simple, a little interactive program. It's talking to the user is inputting something. We are reading that input from the user, concatenating them together and printing them out. So in this session, we have seen how to read from a console, how to write to a console, and the two different ways to print a message onto the console using concatenation and the placeholder syntax, and prefer the placeholder syntax because it's more convenient. And we have also seen that C# is case sensitive. And for more resources, please refer to our homepage, prajimtech.com, and for ASP.NET and C# interview questions, refer to these additional resources. Thank you. Have a great day.